A very warm good evening to all the August audience and our guests who are here with us today. It's a beautiful Sunday and also marks the Oral Cancer Awareness Month, where I Can Care, along with the Sterling Cancer Hospital Foundation for Head and Neck Oncology, is organizing the Oral Cancer E-Conclave for the entire month. We are going to have 4 Sundays, which are full of wonderful scientific sessions for the audience and for with great academic content as well as great practical learning from prolific oncosurgeons who are here with us today on this event and will address us, and from whom we will have a wonderful opportunity to learn a lot of things. I thank all the partnering organizations and their respective representatives who are here with us today, who have been tirelessly working for the past fortnight to make this event really grand and successful. I'm sure that today there will be a lot of new things, lot of new teachings, lot of new experiences coming together on this forum, on this program.
I would like the chairpersons of this panel to please join in. Dr. Vijay Mathur, Dr. Bhavna Dave, and Dr. Prashant Shah, and Dr. Purushottam Chavan. But I hand it over to Dr. Krishna Kumar, and it's my privilege to invite him. He is a professor, Department of Head and Neck Surgery and Oncology, Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences, Kochi. Reputed journals. He's been assistant editor to the Journal of Head and Neck Physician and Surgeon, associate editor to the Frontiers Journal, Otorrangio in Head and Neck Surgery and Oral Surgery. Very important positions at various important associations, and more than 190 publications to reputed journals. And he's been very enthusiastic today for his panel. So over to you, straightforward.
Just a minute, Dr. Krishna, just for everyone, because we had a lot of questions. So there is a community page which I have put. Everyone can just log in and just join the community page, and we will put all the question and answer there from the speakers, from the faculty. We'll take the answers and we'll put it there. So just for everyone, just there is this, I'm putting it again for the benefit of everyone. Just join the community page, and you can do it right now. It will just take 30 seconds. Over to you, Dr. Krishna. Sorry for intervening.
No problems. Good afternoon, everyone. Can I share my screen now?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Can we introduce the panelists? Yeah, it is there. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so the panel, you have heard a lot about managing potentially malignant disorders of the oral cavity, but I'll be dealing on the practical tips and management aspects. There'll be a lot of repetitions, I guess. And today on the panel, we have Dr. Mitesh Patel, he's a maxillofacial surgeon. Pawan Sinhal, Jan Shah, maxillofacial surgeon again. Ashok Das is a surgical oncologist, and Reena Kumar, a dental surgeon. Dr. Akshat Malik, another surgical oncologist. Dr. Rashmi Shukla, radiation oncologist. Manmohan Agarwal, a surgical oncologist. And a pathologist, Dr. Riti Agarwal. And one more radiation oncologist, Dr. Hardik Patel. Are they all here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just yeah. So this is my first case. We'll be going through a series of simple cases which we all come across in our clinic. So this is a leukoplakia, very clear. It's defined as a white patch or a plaque on the oral mucosa that cannot be removed by scraping and cannot be classified clinically or microscopically as another disease entity. My question to all the surgeons here, Dr. Mitesh, when will you consider biopsy in such lesions, and what type of biopsy you will do? Dr.
Hello.
Mitesh? Dr.
Yes.
Mitesh?
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Sir, when I find the history of the long-term lesion having a history of a long-term duration, just size is more than 1 centimeter, is I feel some nodularity in there. thickened or speckle lesion is there, then I will prefer the biopsy.
Okay,
And,
so nodularity and speckleness and duration are the things which you consider. Dr. Pavan, what are your considerations? When will you think of a biopsy, or will you just observe? Pavan, are you here? Pavan Singhal?
Yeah, Pavan Singh will be up. So it is like it's a variegated appearance, or just he told us about the nodulity and all. It might be erythroleucoplakia, then I'll certainly go for a biopsy down there. And it is more than 2 centimeters for me. In my like practice, I prefer taking a biopsy in a lesion which is more than 2 centimeters, which is there for more than 3 months altogether. And then there are some changes patient has observed, or I have observed on routine follow-ups of the patient, like change in color or change in the texture, nodularity or spread of lesion, all those things, I'll go for a biopsy.
Some of them you may observe also. That's what you are trying to say. So
Yes.
when do you observe? Like a homogeneous lesions or something?
So I observe less than 2 centimeter lesions, which are homogeneous, which are flat, usually flat, and which are white, not speckled sort of thing.
Right. Dr. Gunjan Shah, what sort of biopsy will you do? Will you prefer to do an excision, a punch, an incision? What do you do? Dr. Gunjan Shah is here? He's not here. Ashok, Ashok, are you here? Hello? Dr. Gunjan Shah. Yeah, Ashok. My question was, you saw the lesion. It's a pretty homogeneous lesion. When will you consider biopsy in such lesions, and what sort of biopsy?
Yes. Okay. Actually, this, as you have shown it very clearly, it's a homogeneous lesion. So first, I would like to go for some counseling and all. I am not very keen to do a biopsy unless and until I found some indurated area over that whole lesion. And if at all I found any induration kind of thing, then I will go for an incisional biopsy, because it's spans.
The induration is one thing.
Yes, yes.
So induration is one.
If I found any indurated area, then I'll go for.
Okay. Dr. Akshat, are you here? What is your policy?
Yes, sir. So regarding the biopsy, I'll prefer doing an incisional biopsy.
Incisional biopsy. And do you use some like staining, like AIDS, the Lugol side in all those things? Will you do you prefer?
I have used NBI previously, but then
NBI, for the audience sake, NBI is narrowband imaging.
Narrowband imaging, yes, that's right.
Yeah. So,
along with that, but currently in my practice, I am just using naked eye examination, and I go as per my clinical acumen at present.
Right.
I would also mention that. Yeah. So these heterogeneous lesions, they can be also associated with some tooth trauma and all. I would prefer waiting for some time before going ahead with biopsy if I can see the inciting factor out there.
Right. Do you? So I'll show you this lesion. Okay. Dr. Mitesh again. What is your change in policy when you come to this lesion? Mitesh, are you here?
Yeah, yes, sir. This is a very widespread lesion. So definitely, sir, we are not excised completely, but we can take a biopsy.
Will you take a biopsy?
Yeah, it's a more representable area. We'll take the incisional biopsy first.
Which will be the more representative areas? From this diagram, here, you can see some red, whitish areas, thickened areas. You can see some red areas. Sir, so which area will you prefer?
Sir, I like to take a biopsy from the right and white mixed area is there. It's a more representative. I took another biopsy for the most thickened area of the lesion.
Okay. And so you take a multiple biopsy. In such lesions, you take multiple biopsy. That's the point. If it is a heterogeneous lesion, you go for a multiple biopsy. Akshat, anything to add? Do you risk stratify such lesions?
Definitely. So that is part of the history taking as well. We need to know about their addiction status and how long they have had the lesion for. That thing apart.
How do you risk stratify? leukoplakia, leukoerythroplakias. Dr. Gauri was hinting to, she told something about
definitely. It. So, first of all, whether it is heterogeneous, the site of the leukoplakia, whether it is tongue, floor of mouth, and RMT, they are the high risk sites. So, I would of course be wary about such lesions. Besides that, if it is heterogeneous or there is some induration involved, or it's erythroleukoplakic, or if the patient is a non-addict, then also I will be eager to take a biopsy or at least have my suspicion higher.
Okay, so the key point is that we have to risk stratify. We have to try to distinguish between a high-risk lesion and, am I audible? Low-risk lesions, and low-risk lesions, maybe we can wait a little bit, but high-risk lesions will demand a biopsy and appropriate management. So we have Dr. Riti Agarwal, our pathologist. What biopsy do you prefer, an incision biopsy or a punch biopsy? If you are to give some suggestions to surgeons, what will you say to them? How do you want the surgeon to do a biopsy? Dr. Riti Agarwal.
Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are.
Yes, sir. Sir, as a pathologist, if I discuss this case, like it's a heterogeneous lesion, so I would prefer multiple biopsies. And the two important things that we look for is depth and in situ change or dysplastic change. And the second thing, which I already mentioned in my lecture, also in my talk, that we need to see the relationship of the adjacent normal mucosa with the lesional change that is happening there. So many times what happens is, if it is a varicose or a, a keratotic plaque or anything like that, if the surgeon takes only the punch, so what I see in my pathology is just the hyperplastic, hyperkeratotic lesion is there, and which in case we embed it very flat because there's no depth to it. So it's of no use in a way.
So the point is very clear, you have made it. So you prefer a deep biopsy, and you prefer a normal tissue along with the
very much, and especially if the surgeon is having his own clinical acumen, because sometimes they really tell us that it's a varicoid lesion. They are very sure about that. So in those cases, until and unless the surgeon has his own limitation of trismus or any other thing, we would like to have a biopsy, which in case if not deep, at least with the adjacent normal mucosa.
Right. So I got your point. So to summarize what you said, you need a deep biopsy. You prefer an incisional biopsy rather than punch biopsy, because punch biopsy can be the center of the lesions, and better include some normal tissue.
Definitely.
And if possible, get multiple biopsies if the lesions are heterogeneous.
Definitely.
Those are very good points. Now, my additional question: what do you look in this specimen specifically? And what are your challenges?
Specifically, whenever we get a biopsy, see, the size doesn't really matter at times. If I can really make out that I can see some base is there to the biopsy. So from the very start, the grossing happens and the bending happens. We make it sure that we have the proper plane to the section. We make it sure that we do not embed it flat. We embed it in a vertical plane so that I know that I can see the mucosa, I can see the deeper tissue, and so the alignment is there. And that is what. And in case the clinician is very sure it is not the pseudoepitheliomatous, though you cannot see any deep change or anything, we go for serial deep cuts, and we take the help of immunohistochemistry, CK also. A simple cytokeratin at times is so helpful, especially in inflammatory lesions, where you're not sure that single cell infiltration is there or not. So in those cases, the CK really highlights the spastic cells, which were, we were missing out because of the inflammatory background.
Dr. Gunjan Shah, as a surgeon, what do you expect from the pathologist's report? The most important point.
Dr. Gunjan has not joined.
Dr. Gunjan Shah is not. Mithali, I'm sorry, I missed you. Dr. Mithali Dandekar, is she here?
Yes, very much.
Okay, Dr. Mitali. So here's a question. As a surgeon, what do you want to hear from the pathologist?
So, as I've been listening to this panel, two important things is predominantly all these oral pre-malignant lesions are clinical as far as the clinical judgment of the clinician goes. And secondly, yes, if you go ahead with an incision biopsy, as you correctly discussed, I would be looking for the amount or the measure of the dysplasia. Predominantly dysplasia. Whether it is severe dysplasia or carcinoma in situ. And it would probably help me to make a better judgment call as to whether I should go ahead with a complete resection, or if the patient is apprehensive, I can still give him an option of very close follow-up.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to hear from you, the word dysplasia. So, Dr. Rithi again, so how do you comment on this dysplasia aspect? There is some confusion or your binary system and
yes, sir.
system. What is that? What is it? How
Sir, actually, earlier we, not earlier also, still there's, two schools of thought in which one is mild, moderate and severe, which really follows like how much loss of polarity has happened as we move from the towards the superficial layers. And then now what is...
So what is this binary system?
So now it's like low grade and high grade, where in high grade they have clubbed moderate and severe.
Right. Yeah, and again, Dr. Mitesha, how will this grading of dysplasia help you in your management?
So definitely we are, if the low grade and is a mild or moderate, so we can closely observe the, hello?
Yeah, I'm hearing.
It is a low grade or as a mild, moderate dysplasia, so we can observe and a close follow-up. Again, it's a severe dysplasia, so we like to excise
it fully. Okay.
Yes.
Right. If the mild dysplasia you may observe. Okay. I have two radiation oncologists, Dr. Roshni Shukla and Dr. Hardik Patel. I'll show you this lesion. Is there any role for radiation therapy in such cases? The surgeons were saying they're going to excise, but how much they will do excision? The edges are going to come back. So is there any role for radiation therapy in this case? Dr. Roshni Shukla? Is she here? Dr. Shukla, is she here? Or Hardik Patel? I don't think they are here. Hello?
Dr. Hardik, are you there? No, both of them are not there.
Okay. All right. So this is a difficult lesion to treat. So Dr. Pawan, how are you going to excise this whole mouth?
No doubt it is very difficult to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll be doing it in piecemeals.
Right.
And because I can't take a all-block dissection for a dissection of this lesion as such. But you asked about radiation's oncologist's opinion. I think in such lesion it can upstage the tumor in these lesions. But of course,
radiation therapy is usually not advised.
Yes, it is not advised. So no doubt this lesion, if it turns out to be moderate to severe dysplasia or maybe a carcinoma in situ, I will have to take it out.
Right. And it is difficult in such a situation.
Although it is difficult to do this, I will have to take the margin also.
Yeah. Okay, can I make a comment?
Okay. Yes, Ashok, come on. You have a better way of taking this out? Ashok? Hello, Ashok?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thing is that suppose in this particular patients, as patient is having a good mouth opening and there is a huge areas of involvement. So even I don't mind to take an opinion from the radiation oncologist. Because just excising
the problem here is these are the difficult.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, I understand your point. But the problem is, many areas will be just dysplasia. They are not truly malignant. So radiation therapy won't work. It's a difficult situation. We all agree. Let's move on.
May I just interject for a minute?
Yes, please. Akshat?
In the previous picture which we were showing, I would not go ahead with the excision of the complete thing. I would, like we discussed previously, we'll be taking multiple biopsies.
Yeah.
And I would take out the most unhealthy part, or depending on the dysplasia report, only that particular area with few millimeter margins. I understand that the entire mucosa is having changes, but then we cannot keep running after that. And that's a common thing which we find in our practice.
Let's all agree that it's a difficult lesion, and sometimes we do get such difficult lesions. So we have a dental surgeon here, Dr. Reena Kumar. How do you manage a leukoplakia in a dental clinic? Is there a situation when you decide that you will refer the patient to a higher center, then do a biopsy and then refer?
Thank you, Dr. Krishna Kumar.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Krishna Kumar, for the question. And I'm pleased to be here on the panel.
Yeah.
So where oral cancer is concerned and where a dental clinic is concerned, I think the role there is huge, because we really need to understand that a patient visits a dental clinic, and that's often considered the first point of care and the first point of contact.
Correct.
So early detection would be very important, and to reduce the mortality rate of these patients suffering from oral cancer. That's why I guess there's got to be a large amount of demand. I think we all have to draw in for non-invasive, rapid and easy to use techniques for early detection. And I think where this is concerned now, there are two aspects to it. One is, of course, educating our patient, and the other is educating our clinicians. That even it doesn't matter what the patient comes to you for, whether it is an orthodontic treatment or whether it is a XYZ implant treatment, but you are mandated to look inside the mouth and actually do a visual examination. So that is a mandatory thing. And at the same time, take a very intense history. One is, of course, about where is the patient coming from, because if the patient is located in certain parts of the country, and especially in the Northeast or wherever, where we have a lot of male population, over that the female is overriding that. The female population which is coming up with oral cancers is higher in these areas and in the central India. So in such a situation, we would like to understand what are the factors. So how much is the patient consuming tobacco, the betel nut quid, alcohol, smoking, what are the risk factors happening, and how much is it all this contributing to what is happening in the mouth? So that's important. And of course, a visual examination. You're saying something, Dr. Krishna Kumar?
Go ahead.
Okay. So what I would do, or I would teach my student to do, would be probably to do a visual examination, try to see whether this lesion can be a white lesion which can be wiped off or not. Can it be scraped off? Can it be not scraped off? So make one decision over there. And from there on, probably the better thing would be to call in and take an opinion, because it is very, very important. And if there is a habit, which is strong habit is there, along with that, you see submucous fibrosis, OSM, and then along with that, there is leukoplakia, erythroplakia, and leukoerythroplakia is happening, and various plaque lesions happening. I think the need for looking at various, going into further screening, the screening would include, let's say, beyond physical examination, which would be, we would do a physical examination, which would be a systematic visual examination and palpation, lymph nodes, salivary glands, lips, inspect everything along. And along with that, probably a histopathological inspection. But most importantly, I think today's day, the role of the stains which have come in, as I think you were talking about that also, you asked somebody about it. So that was a really nice question, I thought. Really nice suggestion from your side. Because I think the visual staining technique, which we are all used to be doing at Toluidine Blue, and now with things which have come up in the form of our stains, which are this, what are these things which we have these, I forget the name, the optical coherence, and then we have different kinds by which we get. Yes, so that's right. Yes, I'm just forgetting the name.
Last question: is there a role? This we hear a lot about this breast self-examination.
Yes.
So, is there a role of mouth self-examination prevention and
absolutely? As I said, Dr. Krishna Kumar, that there are two roles to it. One is educating the patient, and the other is educating the doctor, the clinician. So where educating the patient concerned is one about good habits, of course, and the other is examining your mouth. And examining your mouth, and we have that chart, very clear chart, the 8-point check we have. So the patient is taught how to use the 8-point check, and of course the mouth opening, because that's the simplest thing that a person can do. How much is your mouth opening? Is your mouth opening 4 fingers, or having reduced mouth opening, and are you having any kind of lesions in the mouth? Do you have an associated habit? and what really is going on. So in that case, you are educating your patient to look at himself, empowering. And we at ICANCare have two things which we have, which is very interesting. I'm sorry, this is an ICANCare event, so I would really like to bring that up also, because we have a digital app, it's an ICANCare app, wherein the patient is empowered. Yes, we empower the patient, not just by education, but he can download this little thing on his mobile, and he can actually check to see whether his mouth opening is correct or not, and he can actually get educated by that. That's number one. And of course, these charts which are available, and so it is a clinician's duty to educate himself and to educate the patient and the families on both aspects. One is, of course, good, healthy health behavior. And the second most important thing I would say is self-examination and assessing yourself and coming in for you can really change the progression of the disease and what can be what can really be a issue, because we all understand that that if an oral mucosal examination can effectively reduce oral cancer rate by 40%, mortality by 40%. Okay. And the 5-year survival rate is very high. Those studies have shown that. Yes, Dr. Krishna.
So let me conclude by saying that dental clinics and the primary area of contact areas has a great role to play in preventing and diagnosing early cancers.
Good management there and good education there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So to summarize this first part of the panel, homogeneous and heterogeneous leukoplakias can be there. Non-homogeneous can be speckled, nodular, or verrucous. The annual malignant transformation rate for all types of leukoplekia is around 1%. And we have risk stratification, and degree of dysplasia on biopsy is a major point on risk stratification. The other points like female gender, older patients, larger lesions, non-homogeneous, lateral ventral tongue, floor of the mouth lesions, and of course some biomarkers which we don't usually do. And the presence of dysplasia is a single most significant predictor of malignant transformation. And some visual staining and autofluorescence and narrowband imaging may do some help, especially in identifying the high-risk lesions and taking a biopsy. And we talked about the steps to prevent the recurrence of these lesions. So one last question in this point, Dr. Mithali, how would you look into this habit cessation and chemoprevention? How will you prevent these lesions in coming back?
Okay, so to answer the second point first, as of today, we know there are studies which are ongoing, the curcumin trial, but really nothing that suggests level 1 evidence to prescribe chemopreventive drugs to all these patients. Yeah. And coming on to the first point, in fact, that is the single most important advice and counseling that one must give to these patients, because like we've been discussing for the last 20 minutes or so, these are very complex lesions. It just doesn't come as a single 2-centimeter lesion on the hard palate, which we go ahead and excise. There will be multiple field cancerization lesions in the mouth, all over the oral cavity, and removing all of them is not an easy task. So habit cessation is, of course, of utmost importance. In fact, if it is a low-risk lesion, I would not really jump the panic button and go ahead and excise it. In fact, I would give the patient enough time, a window period, like we say, for cessation of habits, and then go ahead and prioritize the lesions and then decide further management.
Correct. All right. So chemoprevention is defined as an administration of agents to reverse a carcinogenesis, not very successful. Different agents like retinoids, beta-carotene, vitamin E, selenium, COX-2 inhibitors, and curcumin have been tried, but not of much use. Dr. Mitesh, do you have any experience on this curcumin? Anybody can answer that question? Curcumin. Dr. Pawan?
May I come in? May I come in, please?
Yes, please.
Curcumin has worked very well with our patients, and there's certain formulations, especially for a patient with oral submucous fibrosis, where we have Curin's gargle, which consists of curcumin, and based it along with a few other products, really helps out and eases out. and helps along with the exercising, especially when we give them a tris care and for mouth opening exercises. Along with that, it kind of loosens up the muscular tissue in there, and the collagen tissue kind of loosens up, and the patient is definitely better off. And curcumin has been tried by many dental researchers, and it has shown to have major improvements.
Yes.
And our product of one of the products, which is Curin's Gargle, I think by Pneumatis Sundumets, it's a very good product because we do give it to our patients, all the patients with oral submucous fibrosis, for gargle and rehabilitation during the mouth opening process.
Yeah, so curcumin has some role. So this is a slide summarizing the lesion. We risk stratify. It is a low risk, high risk lesion, excision. Low risk lesions, you can remove the irritant factors and follow up these lesions. And if they are progressing, we may have to consider excision. Now, some special situations, a small leukoplakia, okay, with some little bit reddish areas. Pawan, what do you do? Do you do an incision biopsy and an excision biopsy? And what margins will you take? Will you do some imaging before this?
I think this lesion, because it has got a reddish nodularity down there, I'll go for an excisional biopsy with taking around 2-3 mm margins all along.
And what if the biopsy comes as invasive squamous cell carcinoma? This is a common tricky situation. You know, you excise it close and suddenly the report comes as invasive squamous cell carcinoma. So how do you?
I'll revise the lesion with supraomoid neck dissection at least, if it turns out to be invasive carcinoma.
Akshad, how do you do that?
So, in fact, I had one case in January, which was quite similar. Superficial lesion, and on excisional biopsy, it came out to be SCC with depth of invasion just 1 millimeter.
Yeah.
I went ahead.
So you excise the lesion, and if it is a thicker lesion, you may go for a staged neck dissection. Is that right?
Yeah. So even in this case, I revised my margins and I did a neck dissection. Okay. Like Dr. Pawan mentioned, we do take few millimeters margins, but then they do come down, and for CA purpose, we require more margins. We cannot leave it at that.
Right. Dr. Reena, okay, so we see this traumatic ulcers. So how do you differentiate between problematic lesion and the traumatic ulcers? Anybody can take this. Dr. Reena, I was asking you, here's a picture of traumatic ulcers. How do you differentiate and counsel your patient that it is not a problem? Can you hear me? I think she's not hearing me. Hello? Dr. Pawan?
Yes.
Hello?
Dr. Krishna, I'll at first convince the patient that it is not malignant sort of thing. It looks more like traumatic because it is flat. It doesn't have hyperepic margins. Yeah. So at first, I'll see to the inciting factor which has caused this lesion. So it might be the teeth, a sharp teeth. So I'll refer the case to dental surgeon. He will just polish the teeth and the job is done. But if it is not being corrected after that, within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, then of course I'll go and take it out.
It's a very critical part. May I come in, please?
Yes, please.
It's a very critical thing that these sharp teeth should be really managed, because these chronic trauma can again lead to something which is, we do know what it ends up with. So what really starts out as a small traumatic ulcer might have a long-term, not negative prognosis. As a result, they have to be identified, informed to the patient, and attended to by the dental clinic.
Right. So these are usually short-lasting. The causal traumatic event has to be clearly identified and dealt with. And these lesions don't have indurations, and they usually heal. And if not healing in 2 to 3 weeks, you should go for a biopsy. And two special situations like proliferative verrucous leukoplakia and chronic hyperplastic candida. Dr. Riti, how do you diagnose this? Riti is here. Dr. Riti, pathology. Hello.
I think network issue dropped off. I will connect with her and get her.
All right. Dr. Ashok, do you have some experience on these two lesions? Do you see them occasionally? Or any of the surgeons?
See them occasionally, and believe me, it's really a very tough situation. Right. The first one, this proliferative varicose leukoplakia. But again, coming to the basic, we look for any induration, mostly. We're back on that induration, that clinical findings. And if I got any suspicious induration, then I will definitely go for incisional biopsy and manage accordingly. And the second is, yes, it's in clinical diagnosis with a median this thing. So we take we take help of medications, and that's
right.
all.
Right. Anybody, any difference of opinion here? Anybody gives antifungal therapy for this chronic hyperplastic candidiasis?
Doctor.
Yes, Dr. Reena.
Yes, we do, because this hyperplastic candidiasis are often that, there is an issue of a fungal infection, overlying fungal infection. So we do give a long-term antifungal treatment is given. Yes, we do give it. But
Pawan, you were going to say.
Yeah, but these are nightmare cases, I'm telling you. Because these, when I palpate this tongue over the dorsum of chronic hyperplastic candidiasis, I am under suspicion, because most of these lesions are formed to hard. At some places, you will find formed to hard lesions. So at first, go for anti-fungal. If it is not getting anything relief, then I'll take a biopsy. Yeah,
Biopsy and excision, and these are lesions which have high chance of malignant transformations. So moving on from leukoplakia to lichen planus, the second lesions, very commonly we see, and not very difficult to diagnose on the tongue and on the buccal striated lesions, and sometimes we can also see the lichenoid lesions, lichen planus and lichenoid lesions. Okay, Dr. Mitesh, how do you explain this to the patients? Do you take a biopsy? How do you manage? How do you differentiate between lichen planus and lichenoid lesions? Dr. Mitesh? Dr. Gunjan is here now. Mithali again. Dr. Mithali?
Yeah. So first and foremost, am I audible?
Sorry.
You're audible, Mithali.
Yeah. So first and foremost, like we've been reiterating over and over again, all these white lesions, red lesions in the mouth are a clinical judgment call. Anything that appears suspicious, which we have discussed at large, anything which is indurated, anything which is nodular, speckled, we will not wait and watch. Lichen planus, typically, like you've been showing in your pictures, they have these reticular whitish striae, and they are mainly symmetrical, mostly on either side, give typical history of waxing and waning with time. So I'll ask my patients to take it easy with them. Yes, they would have symptoms of burning sensations, and would like to observe them with medical management.
Akshat, how do you differentiate between this lichenoid lesion and the lichen planus? Akshat?
So it will, that depends on the biopsy only. Clinically, if there is some minimal induration, probably yes, but then it's very difficult to differentiate. I would still biopsy these lesions. In fact, in UK, where I was practicing earlier, there we had less number of oral cancer patients, but we had many patients with similar looking lesions who used to come up. And we had to biopsy it before saying that it's lichen planus or not.
Yeah, that's a good point. Dr. Reena, you want to
Yes, I want to add something, because you see a lichenoid reaction is we see a lot of it in the dental clinic, because most of it is actually a reaction to something which is the tissues have been in contact with. So this could be a metallic restoration, because Yes, there's always a factor. The cause-effect factor has to be really found, and it is easily found because you see there are patients who are wearing dentures, and many times if the dentures are not made in proper clinic, then you have this monomer which is still leaching out, and if it has not been heat cured and done properly, then what drugs are they using? It's very important to take that, and also the restorative, because the old-time fillings are all with silver amalgam, and is there something which is happening, a galvanic current, and what really is going on? So it's basically an antigen fixing of the epithelial cells. So I believe that a very good protocol of history has to be followed in here, and the lichenoid reactions can be recognized in a dental clinic pretty easily.
Right. So it's a complex chronic inflammatory disease that it's about 1 to 2% immune mediated. Malignant transformation of OLP is less than 1%. Reticular erosion dangerous, I guess, with a little more of malignant transformation. Lichenoid lesions usually have these associations like drugs, dental restorative materials, and this graft versus host disease. That's history has to be properly taken, as Dr. Reena was commenting, and clinically they are usually unilateral. You agree? Yeah, and lichen planus lesions are bilateral, and a little more of malignant.
I have seen a very interesting lichenoid lesion when a patient who had a gold restoration and a silver restoration. So you see there was a galvanic current set up inside the mouth, and there was a cell which had been formed. So as a result, on both sides, this patient had this very severe lichenoid because it was like a electrical cell which had been created in it with 2 electrodes, one silver and one gold, sitting in there, silver amalgam filling and a gold restoration. So it was quite a unique one, and it's been reported by us.
So always the point is always look for some factors which are responsible, like drugs history or like dental and amalgams, and then you can suspect lichenoid lesions. And otherwise, if it is a typical picture of lichen planus lesions, and mind you, both these can very rarely turn to be malignant. Now let's come to the last lesion for the day, submucous fibrosis. We heard about that in detail, but just to sum up some practical tips from you all clinicians. Dr. Mitesh, is he back? Dr. Gunjan Shah, is he here? How do you prevent? Please, how do you prevent these lesions in your clinic? Submucous fibrosis. Hello, prevent or progress.
Hello, sir.
Yes. My question is about a submucous fibrosis. How do you prevent the progression? Hello.
Mitesh, unmute yourself, please.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, Mitesh. Go ahead. Mitesh, unmute.
Hello, sir.
Please go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Most of patients having submucous fibrosis having a history of betel nut chewing or tobacco chewing. So we have to first quit the habit, quit the habit, then just do the physiotherapy as much as possible. So this is the best way to prevent the submucous fibrosis.
May I come in, Dr. Krishna Kumar, please?
Yeah, very important.
Dr. Krishna Kumar, if you allow me.
Any role for some nutritional,
Yes, sir. Generally, patient asked to have a balanced diet, balanced diet, and then we generally use the carotenoids and this medicine for a long term.
Yeah.
May I come in, Dr. Krishna Kumar, if you permit me?
Right. Dr. Reena.
Yeah, I don't know why. Can you hear me? Because it's showing that I'm muted. Okay.
So how do you prevent the progression?
Yeah. So I believe that the best thing is prevention. So prevention is, of course, a good habit, good counseling. Getting of that is number one. Number two is what we would do is mouth opening. So we have developed at Icon Care a beautiful, simple tool, which is called a Triscare, which is the patient is given and he or she can place it in the mouth and open it. And there is a grading scale which tells as to how much is the mouth opening which has happened and how much does it open, and progressively do this. Along with that, there are gargles, as I said, And along with that, there are micronutrients which are given. So there are vitamin E, C, D, and these are given to the patient with lycopene. So, so all this put together really works for the patient. So, but the most important thing is to continue working on the mouth opening, and that is with an instrument called Triscare, which we have developed at iCareCare. It really works very well, and it's a very small, adaptable. A lot of instruments, of course, are available in the market, starting from simple gadgets of little elastic modules, all the way down to this. So, basically, it is about the habit stopping.
Habit stopping. I would request you to put all these. I would request you to put all these, the gadgets you're telling, or the in the chat box, so that
Thank
the
you.
audience.
We do that. We do that. Thank you.
Yeah. Right. And regarding the management, Mithali, this Placentrex extract, steroid injections, have they worked in your hands?
So a point one must understand about submucous fibrosis is it goes through gradings. It goes through 4 classical steps. The initial stage 1 and stage 2 are the early changes, wherein there is more of mucosal congestion. The fibroblasts are just setting in. And it is the advanced stage actually where the fibroblasts become more mature, the blood vessels actually undergo constriction. So these advanced stages are the ones which are more of a management challenge. And yes, there have been various agents, hyaluronic acid, Placentrex. Really, unfortunately, nothing has been shown to be foolproof, and that is the reason we have so many agents which come into.
So that's the point I wanted to make out. Many of these medical injection managements are not of long-term use. Dr. Ashok, any experience with Placentrex, hyaluronidase, or all those things? Ashok?
Yeah. Okay, sorry, I don't use these things, but I have seen quite few dental practitioners, dental surgeons they use, and they claim to have some good results.
You're a surgeon, but you don't believe in all this.
Yes, because basically those patients whom I see in my clinic, basically they come in the very late stage, and particularly the kind of patient you have shown in the picture. So unfortunately, I miss those early stage disease patient, and this patient who comes to me in an advanced stage, they really need surgical intervention.
Right. Pawan, how do you manage surgically these cases?
So, I've tried coronodectomy. I've tried with the nasolabial flaps, even SSGs. Yeah. Then when I saw the presentation of Dr. Madan Kapre once during our FHNO, I started using that mandibular mucosal flap. And that is, I think that is very good after doing a laser mucosotomy in oral submucous fibrosis. Do with laser, make a Y with the laser, then in that space fill this mandibular mucosal flap. It works well. Nasolabial flap, I'm not using much because it gives a lot of cosmetic deformity there on the face. And the third thing, what we could do is, if it is too much grade 3, 4, and the patient is willing or the facility is available, like at your center, I'll go for bilateral or maybe unilateral radial forearm flap.
Right. So the essence is that if it is because fibrosis is severe enough, you'll have to go for a surgical management. And of course, as the previous speaker told, there has to be a lot of motivation. He was using the word motivation again and again. There has to be motivation from the patient to undergo these exercises and so on. And in such patients, we have to do surgical management with the release and some sort of interposition graft. So the malignant transformation rate is about 7 to 13%. We have to counsel regarding cessation of habits, correct nutritional deficiency, mouth opening exercises, submucosal injections like hyaluronidase, collagenase, placental extract, not of much benefit, and surgical removal of fibrous tissue and use of tissue graft. And that brings us to the end of this panel. Thank you all for this excellent contributions. Any other last points from all of you? Any other last
points? Can I make a comment?
Yes, Pawan.
A small comment.
Yes.
For self-examination, Dr. Dina was talking about, what we do is I teach my patients to go ahead for 3-finger examination. You
Yeah.
just put your three
finger.
fingers
What is that?
in the mouth and see to it. Just put in your three
What
fingers
is
like
that?
this. Like this, you
Yeah.
put in three fingers among your teeth. If it is openable to that extent, that means there is nothing like that. And if you advise them to see again and again inside the mouth, they might come with anxiety problems again. So I think it should be done with moderate guidance.
Exactly, you know, the forefinger mouth opening, as we say, that's a restricted opening in every patient. So, so that's one of the things what I talked about, and one of the early things that can be easily told because the patient cannot has a restricted mouth opening. Dr. Krishna Kumar, if I may say something, you've been an excellent quiz master, and I think you took this panel discussion to a great height. And thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Dr. Mitesh Patel, any last point to add? I'll just request all the panelists for anything to add. Mitali, you have something to add?
If you can stop the screen share, it would be easy for we can give the space there. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Sure. Yeah, Mitali, continue.
Yeah, so oral potentially malignant are disorders and they're not just lesions. So take care of it in toto by giving a holistic counseling as far as habit cessation is concerned and cure of the irritant factor, mainly dental in origin.
Very good point. Very nice point. Ashok, your last point. Ashok Das. Akshat.
Yeah. So I guess
Anything
we
to
have
add?
already summarized quite well. I would also add on that all these patients, they have in spite of what you do, such lesions may come back and they might even progress. So patients need to be aware of that and they need to be cautious about it.
Okay. Dr. Reena, any last points?
What we would say is that that I would implore that every doctor has to be, every medical person, every person in every person's clinic has to be talking to the patient about habits, because prevention is the way to go. And unless we have well-educated and well-aware people managing our clinics and ourselves, I think we cannot manage our patients very well. And mouth opening is one of the simplest ways to check good habits, and talking to people and finding out what is it that, maybe Shruti, you're here. Would you like to show us the Triscare? I don't have it, other than I've shown it just now. Yes, I think this is one of the things that I was talking about. So this is a simple one that we have. So probably every clinic having one of these, equipping it with this, such that it's very simply that the patient just places it in the mouth, gauges how much is the mouth opening, and turns it around by himself or herself, and is able to open the mouth, and then keeps it and can be collapsed and taken. That's a reading which can be put in. So I would suggest that I think it's very important that we go the prevention way, and education, prevention, talking, not just for ourselves, our patients, but every person in the clinic, and be a 2AR, if not a 5A person.
Right. Mitesh, you have been missing for some time. Mitesh, is he back?
Thank you, Shruti. Thank you.
Mitesh, anything to add? And lastly, Dr. Riti Agarwal, our pathologist. What is advice to all these big surgeons? Riti Agarwal, your last point.
She has not been able to join, so she's not here actually. She couldn't join back.
Okay. And the radiation oncologists are also not here. So thank you very much. That was an excellent panel. Thank you. Thank you, I Can Care, Dr. Vikram, and all the organizers.
Let's all give a round of applause to Dr. Krishna Kumar. I think he's been fantastic.
Nice job.
Thank you very much.
So I think that was a wonderful panel discussion. And before we say goodbye to everyone, I think we'll have a concluding remarks from Dr. Somesh Chandra. Over to you, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Yeah, I thank all today's speakers and Dr. Krishna Kumar for an excellent conduct of the panel. And I think Shruti and you and everyone who's been busy getting people registered and sending out messages about the event, you've done a fantastic job. We had more than 200 people attending the sessions. And that in COVID times, I think, to have so many people together is a great achievement. It's like any large national meeting of a prestigious organization. And I'm sure that FHNO would appreciate that bringing different platforms together definitely works in the interest of everyone. And this has given us a very important message that if we bring the multiple disciplines together, how much more we can achieve and how much more meaningful and multidimensional we can make our meetings. Thank you.